What's up, everyone? They made a mistake and now it's going to be their problem. They let us get to Friday again. I hope you're all having a good week, trying to follow the 3 H's of the channel, and if you didn't have a good week, well, there's always next week, and there's always tomorrow, so you never know when that good day might come around. But in this episode of the podcast, how about that pyramid thing, eh? If you haven't heard, I let it kind of sit for a week just to see if there was any more information on it. A team in Italy presented bombshell research that claimed to have discovered a multi-thousand-foot tall well and chamber underneath of the Khafre Pyramid. So I'm reading this from MSN, but I think it was posted by the Daily Mail or something like that. But either way, this is crazy. This is something you'd only see in like an Indiana Jones movie, or maybe a National Treasure movie, or maybe that 007 movie where they were in the pyramids. Moonraker, I think it was called. Anyway, it says researchers said they determined a confidence level well above 87% that there are structures that have been identified beneath the Pyramid of Khafre, and that there are even structures below the other pyramids on the Giza Plateau. So you might be wondering how they did this, and they didn't just start digging a hole by the pyramids. That would take a long time. So what they did do was they sent high-frequency electromagnetic waves into the subsurface, and when these signals hit something, they would bounce back. And when you do this a whole bunch of times, it kind of maps out what's below the surface. Now, of course, there are other independent scientists and critics and professors who are not really buying all this yet. You know, they say that it has to be peer-reviewed, and they say that this is probably nothing, and they're just kind of dismissing it. Although other scientists are saying that it is conceivable that there are small structures, such as shafts and chambers, that may exist beneath the pyramids. They believe that they were there before the pyramids were built, because the site was special in some way to ancient Egyptians. Professor Conyers said that the Mayans and other people in ancient Mesoamerica often built pyramids on top of entrances to caves or caverns that had some kind of ceremonial significance to them. But when we go back to the team that found these wells and enclosures and caverns, they say that they found 8 wells and 2 enormous enclosures more than 2,000 feet below the base of the Khafre Pyramid. In fact, they call it an entire hidden world of many structures. And the same professor that I just mentioned before, Professor Conyers, said, "I am skeptical of the deeper claims, but if their algorithms can do what they say, I can't comment on those, then perhaps this will hold up." And even the team who submitted all this research and pictures and stuff to the Daily Mail, they also say that this all needs to be further validated, and that it hasn't been published in any kind of peer-reviewed scientific journal. And this is where things get a little weird. Now, the former Minister of Antiquities in Egypt said the claim of using radar inside the pyramid is false, and the techniques employed are neither scientifically approved nor validated. The team responded that they have the utmost respect for Egyptologists, but their findings are based on objective measurements obtained through advanced radar signal processing. And this is where it gets even weirder. One of the images shows a vertically elongated feature with varying intensity distributions, suggesting the presence of a deep well-like formation. That part is a direct quote, but what it looks like to me, and I will try to put this picture in around here somewheres if I don't get like a copyright strike or anything, but below the pyramid, it looks like that there's 8 cylinders with, you know, like when you take a nail and you wrap a copper wire around it, that's what it looks like. And below that, there's 2 large chambers. And so how they came up with the vertical cylinder type thing is when they were sending these radar beams or electromagnetic beams or whatever through the bottom of the pyramid, and then they would take this data and put it into a special algorithm, is what they call it, and then it would turn this data into vertical images. And I'll try to put the picture in there, and it really does look like there's 8 cylinders with something wrapped around them. Now that could be staircases as well. In fact, this gives the idea to some that these could be some kind of passageway to the Egyptian underworld. Now, where it gets even more weird, as if it's not weird enough already, apparently the team believes that these structures below the pyramid are built 38,000 years ago. Now, as you may or may not know, I think it's Göbekli Tepe, or Göbekli Tepe is how you say it. That's considered to be the oldest human settlement that we know of, and it's around 11 to 13,000 years old, I think. So if that is right, then this thing below the pyramid, if there's anything there at all, could be tens of thousands of years older than that. And not gonna lie, when I first looked at the picture and I compared it to a nail with the copper wire wrapped around it, I thought to myself, is this a power plant? And I know that the idea of the pyramids being some kind of power plant or power generation thing has been around forever. It's mostly called a conspiracy, it's mostly called, bunk or whatever. But I don't know. Looking at that picture really puts me in mind of what a power plant would look like. But if this is as old as they think it is, 38,000 years, then that predates almost any kind of human history that we know of. Usually, I think the estimate is that humans only started living in big groups about 9,000 years ago. And yeah, that's actually mentioned in the article here. Quote, people did not start living in what we now know as cities until about 9,000 years ago. There were a few large villages before that, but those only go back a few thousand years from that time. Now, I must have missed it if it was this team that said this, or if it was other researchers, but they're saying that this thing below the pyramids came from another pre-existing civilization that the pyramids were built on top of. And that would kind of go back to the theory that a massive asteroid or some kind of cataclysmic event happened on Earth around 13,500 years ago, and that kind of destroyed everything. It says here in the article that ice cores in Greenland and other geological data in the Atlantic Ocean say that such an event happened, but scientists have largely dismissed it due to never finding an asteroid crater. And when I hear that, I'm like, I don't know, man. The evidence is there. Try to find it. I don't know what else to tell you. And near the end of the article, or at least the article that's on MSN, it has this little tidbit here that I thought was cool. Researchers believe that ancient Egyptian texts seen as myths are actually historical records of life before the cataclysmic event 13,500 years ago. They said that chapter 149 of the Book of the Dead describes 14 dwellings of the divine, which the team interprets as describing remnants of an advanced civilization existing before dynastic Egypt. It also says the team used the Turn King List, or the Royal Canon, which is an ancient Egyptian document that features the names of kings, including gods and demigods, who supposedly ruled Egypt from before the first recorded dynasties. And, I mean, with all that, and given that there could be stuff underneath the pyramids, I think that it is normal and it would be fine to believe that there are pre-existing civilizations. Some of them could have been very advanced, and there's just nothing left of them because of some cataclysmic event. All this being said, I am 100% not an expert on this. I'm not an archaeologist, an Egyptologist, or anything else. I just found this article and I thought it was really cool. But man, if they had free power generation back then, and we can still have it now, and I'm stuck here paying the hydro bill, bro, what the hell? But it's really cool, isn't it? The fact that there could be a whole pre-existing civilization to ours, which I mean there is, because our civilization, as it currently is, happened after the fall of Egypt, after the fall of Rome, so those are all crazy, big, and powerful civilizations. And if that's the case, I wonder if that's why that the sarcophagus or whatever that the pharaoh is buried in is gold, because it's a conductive metal. There's all kinds of things you could think about with it. But what do you think in the comments? Do you think that this is possible? Do you think that they're misreading all their data? Do you think that there's just nothing underneath the pyramids besides regular shafts? and that the whole thing is bunk, let me know down in the comments. I just thought it was really cool to bring up because this stuff always interests me. Oh, and I think I had a couple people comment and ask me how come after a video I'll say like, oh, which one stuck out to you, which encounter stuck out to you. And if you're curious, the reason I do that, it's purely just to interact with you guys. There's no real other reason for that. And before I found that article about the pyramids, I had this one that I found from Mysterious Universe, written by Paul Seaburn. It's called the White Bluff Screamer. And the reason why I picked this one is because no one's really sure if it's a shapeshifter, if it's a banshee, a creature off an escaped circus train, or the ghost of a jilted wife. A man named Tony England, he told the Tennessean of this now over a century-old tale. This version of the tale goes that a couple and their 7 children were living deep in the hollers of Trace Creek in White Bluff. They told neighbors they were terrified many nights by screams and howls that were coming from the nearby woods. At their wits' end, the husband finally took his gun and went to the woods to hunt for the screamer, only to hear screams coming from inside the house that he had just left. When he returned, he found his children and wife all dead, according to most versions, torn to shreds. White Bluff itself began in 1804 as a fort, and then it became a Civil War-era Union Army encampment, and by 1920, it was a small town. The White Bluff Iron Forge gave people a place to work, and the town kind of grew from there. It had multiple businesses, a planing mill, and things like that, and then the screamer showed up. Back then, locals would talk about hearing what sounded like a crazed or pained woman screaming in the night, and it was said that if someone heard these screams too often, it would drive them to insanity. So as with anything like this, the legend grows, and people will try to go out and find the screamer or find the source of these screams. What they said they saw was a white misty form that appeared before them just before the screams would begin. According to some versions, when the witness found that their family and friends did not believe them, they would take them to the spot where the white apparition appeared, and the ground would be burned and charred. Because the scream sounded female, many thought it was a banshee of Irish mythology. And then as time went on, these screams became associated with the legend of a werewolf or some kind of creature there of the like. In 2018, Tony England interviewed local resident Fred Stacy, who was 95 back then. He said that he believed that the screams were coming from an escaped animal. He said that would match the tales in which people were being killed and their bodies ripped apart. But, as you can see, it doesn't really go along with the original story, nor does it go along with the mist or the burned ground. The alternate version of the tale shows that the man had actually cheated on his wife. The lady found out, and in revenge, she killed her children and herself, and, go insane in the process. Now, that last one, about the man cheating and the woman going insane and killing her kids and herself, that is a very common story from European mythology. I think that almost every European country has some version of it. In fact, even where I live in the Maritimes in New Brunswick, we have our own local versions of a banshee or a white lady type thing, where if you see her, someone close to you or someone else is going to die soon. That's more of a banshee type thing, but yeah. And then there was the other avenue, that what if this thing is all of those things? What if it's a shapeshifter werewolf that also appears as a woman, that also appears as another animal? I know for some that may just be plugging the holes in the gaps of the story, but it is kind of weird though, isn't it? Even in the original one, it said that some beast had torn apart his family, and what he could hear was his wife's screams. And I know that there are many other cryptids in North American mythology at least that can shapeshift. that scream like this, or can mimic voices. I do a lot of them here on the channel. But the reason why I picked this one is I want to put the question out to you. You can let me know in the comments where you live in your city, your state, your province, your country, whatever. Do you have any kind of local story like this? Do you have any kind of local mythology or local legend that kind of has like a certain ghost, a certain spirit, a certain entity, a cryptid? What kind of stories do you have in your place where you live? I was pausing in my speech for a second there because I was watching my cat get ever closer to unplugging my laptop. And she would 100% do so without hesitation. I know she would. She's looking at me all innocent now, but I can tell you, it's not true. But anyways, I do hope you enjoyed this episode. There's a bit of a contrast in topics. There's like a local legend, werewolf, dogman, skinwalker, cryptid thing. And are there things underneath the pyramids that kind of look like a power plant or some kind of pathway to the underworld? You know, it's a pretty wild, it is a pretty wild contrast, isn't it? But I hope you enjoyed this episode and me yapping along and rambling. And if you did, then please like and subscribe. And thank you for pulling up a stump with me. If you would like to donate to the channel, there is a PayPal and a Patreon in the description below. Or on YouTube, there are memberships and super thanks here. But of course, just liking the video, subscribing, ticking the notification bell, and all that good stuff really helps the channel too. And commenting, that really helps as well. And with that, I hope I can see you in the next one, which will be on Sunday. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, maybe you'll stick around for Sunday. I'll see you then. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching.